Hello, listeners. Yamina here. Welcome to the Dr. GPCR podcast. Happy New Year. We hope you had a restful holiday season. On our end, we're excited to be back with brand new Dr. GPCR podcast episodes. Before we dive into this episode, we are excited to launch the Dr. GPCR University program with the goal of providing courses and content on all aspects of GPCR research to support our community. To kick off this new initiative, we partnered with Dr. Terry Kinakin, who will be teaching a course entitled Applying Pharmacology to Drug Discovery starting February 8th. The course will be held every Thursday through February 29th, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Spots are limited to 20 in total, and the deadline to register ends on February 1st. If you register and join us, you'll get 4 live Zoom sessions with 1-hour lectures and 30-minute Q&A each time, a 30-minute one-on-one meeting with Dr. Kinakin according to his availability, access to the cohorts group in the Dr. GPCR ecosystem, where you can find Dr. Kinakin himself and your classmates. You'll get access to the course materials and recordings. You'll get a completion certificate signed by Dr. GPCR and Dr. Kinakin. And if you'd like to take advantage of this, we're also giving you a 1-year Dr. GPCR Ecosystem Premium membership, which is a $250 saving, which gives you access to the Dr. GPCR Ecosystem contents and perks, including our forums, private groups, and to all ecosystem members. And this way you can revisit the course contents at any time and take advantage of visiting the other course contents later on. To get more information and register for the course, join the ecosystem for today for free. What are you doing April 22nd and 23rd? Join us for the inaugural Endocrine Metabolic GPCRs meeting taking place in Birmingham in the UK. This event will bring together scientists from both academia and industry to exchange data, technologies, and ideas in the field of GPCRs in the context of endocrine and metabolic receptors. We have a special offer for the Dr. GPCR community. Visit our website to get more information. The key topics covered at this meeting will be the latest GPCR signaling methodologies, metabolite sensing GPCR biology, and novel endocrine mediators and GPCR activation structures. This meeting is organized and we're partnering with Biospecifica to bring you this meeting. This meeting is also endorsed by the Society of Endocrinology. Mark your calendars again for the next season of the Dr. GPCR Symposia, and mark your calendars for our first event of the year, which is March 15th. This first symposium will cover the topic of GPCR activation and signaling. We will have talks, and we will also be accommodating posters on Zoom in breakout rooms, so stay tuned. If you'd like to give a talk at any of our events, or if you'd like to be my guest on the Dr. GPCR podcast, please email us at hello@drgpcr.com. And now let's dive into this episode. Hello, everyone. This is Yamina from Dr. GPCR. And this morning, I am very excited to have with me Dr. Silvia Sposini. Silvia, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Yamina. Thank you very much for inviting me.
I'm very excited to have you here. And just before we hit record, I put this image in your head being back in Switzerland at the GRC in June. And we did meet in person, in fact, there.
Yes, true. It was a very nice time. And it was actually very nice to meet you in person after reading all about the Dr. GPCR ecosystem mails. It was very nice to finally meet in person.
Same here. Very, very nice to meet you as well in person. And I don't think I had a chance to thank you for putting up your hand at the last session that I led on a discussion which led you.
You mean the session that led me to get this amazing mug?
Yes. No, I think it was and I'm glad you got it in one piece.
Yeah, all the way from the US to France.
So we actually use a company that doesn't require you to buy. So I don't have mugs stored in my apartment at all. And they have printing locations across the world. So it is likely that your mug was printed somewhere in Europe and then sent to you, which is really nice. It's kind of this website that allows you to create art, any kind of art, which we use, and then you don't have to buy it. They have their minimum production pricing, and then you can just order it from anywhere, which is kind of a cool thing. So I don't have enough space in my apartment for storing all these mugs. Although I did one time order, I think over 9 or 10 mugs, and went to the post office and shipped them, which was quite of a long thing. But anyway, I'm glad you got your mug. I'm glad we got to meet at the Gordon conference. Let's start at the beginning. Please tell us who you are and what do you do. I know, but the audience is glad to know as well.
Sure. So my name is Silvia Sposini. I'm originally Italian, but I now live in France, although I'm employed by Imperial College London. So that's quite a peculiar situation, and I'm going to explain how I ended up in this situation. I'm currently a postdoc working on, of course, GPCRs, mainly focusing on membrane trafficking of specifically beta-adrenergic receptors. And at the moment, I'm doing these in neurons using microscopy techniques. So going back to how I ended up in France, but being employed by the UK, a few years ago, when I realized it was the end of my PhD, I was really into research, academic research. I decided to apply for quite competitive but amazing, let's say, fellowship from Wellcome Trust. This was a scheme that really promoted collaborations between labs and also moving people across labs, across countries. And so that's why I got the idea of putting together a collaborative network of people in different countries. And this involves Dr. Eileen, actually professor now, Eileen Hanialoglu in London at Imperial College, Professor Mark Monzastro at UCSF, and Dr. David Perret and Daniel Choquet here in Bordeaux at the Interdisciplinary Institute of Neuroscience. So because of the majority of my experiments are carried out here in Bordeaux, that's where I'm living. But from time to time, I go to London to run some experiments there. And yeah, that's my current situation.
It's so interesting. So you just have to, pack up, take the plane, go to London, do some experiments, pack up, come back home to Bordeaux, and then do some more experiments. It's a very unique situation. Let's go back in time. Did you always want to be a scientist?
So funnily enough, this morning, I went for this morning here in France, because now it's afternoon here. I went to a reach out activity in a high school where essentially I got asked these questions by so many students. So what I can say now, I feel I always knew I wanted to do this. But maybe back in time when I was a student in school, I was still like not sure about my future. But for sure, I've always been really eager to study and also interested in understanding how things work, especially nature. I like to be in contact with nature and just curious about how things were working. And so it came quite natural when it was time for me to pick my university. To go get some information about biology courses. And I thought like, oh yeah, that's for me. I started, I keep on enjoying it. And it was quite a natural process to go from bachelor to master and then PhD and then postdoc.
So, Where did you study? Where did you study?
Both bachelor and master were in Rome, in Italy, where I'm originally from and where my family is. But then towards the end of my master, I realized, well, I started to appreciate the beauty one of the many beauties of academic research, which is how international it can be. And so I was like, oh, it feels too small here. I don't know. I've always been living here. I want to know more about the world and about research in other countries. And so I started applying for a couple of scholarships, which I managed to get, which was great. And that allowed me to move to London, already in Eileen Anialoglu's lab at Imperial College. And initially, I was meant to stay there for only 3 months. Then it became a year. Then I started my PhD. And so I ended up staying there for 6 years. Yeah. And then at the end of
Oh, please
sorry,
go ahead.
go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. And I have rebuttal questions later on. Please go ahead.
Okay. No, just at the end of my PhD, I just felt like, again, 6 years I've been living here, but I'm still curious about the world. And again, this feeling of wanting to explore a bit more and taking advantage of the fact that you can do research everywhere in the world. And that's actually, it's even better, I think, if you go explore different environments, scientific environments. So that's why I tried to look for another, for another lab in another country. And France came up as the best option, matching my scientific interest, but also my personal private life, let's say. Here I am.
How did you pick? So you mentioned that you completed your bachelor's and master's in Rome, in Italy, and then you had the need, you wanted to go explore outside to see how science is done. How did you pick Eileen Hanyalulu's lab?
So,
or how did that happen? If there's a story behind there.
Yes. So the scholarship I applied for was not restrictive in which country or which lab you could pick. So I started sending emails to various labs working on GPCRs, actually dimerization of GPCRs, because my project in Rome was about dimerization of prokineticin receptors in yeast. And what I wanted to do is to expand that story with a technique I couldn't do in the lab where I was. And so I started emailing different labs in Europe who used the breadth or fret technique to look at dimerization. And Eileen was one of them. And she was the first to reply, the nicest, and also the one who allowed me to keep on working on my original project, but in her lab. Because the other labs were saying, yeah, sure, you can come, but you need to work on what we are working on here, on our projects. And that was not really fitting with all the data I acquired already in Italy. And so that's how I ended up in London, in her lab.
She's wonderful. She's been on the podcast, and I don't think I've met her in person, but I know she's super fun to chat with. And I think I met a couple of people from the lab as well in Switzerland. Where else?
Yeah.
So what motivated you to keep on working on the same project but using different techniques during your PhD? But the reason I'm asking is because typically people want to tell you, well, it's better, or it might be better, depending on who you talk to go when you switch labs, to learn something new and work on a different project or on a different type of work.
Yeah, actually, I think I haven't explained this well enough, but again, because it's a quite peculiar situation. When I joined Eileen's lab, was not directly for a PhD. Was just for a few months that were funded by an Italian scholarship to promote essentially going abroad and improving your CV essentially. So at that time, I really needed to stay on my project, but which was again on regulation of how GPCRs work. But while staying in Eileen's lab, of course, I got to know the other projects she was working on. And one of them was trafficking of GPCRs. And so when I decided to stay there for my PhD, I said, okay, great. I love what you do, but I don't want to stay on my dimerization project. I want to switch. Exactly what you said, essentially. It's better to learn something
Yeah.
new. To And so that's how I moved into the membrane trafficking field for GPCRs. And for me, something that really fascinating about GPCRs, apart from the fact that they are everywhere in the body and mediating all possible functions, physiological
Everything.
functions, everything, they are the best. But is how their function is so at a tiny, tiny scale regulated. These
Yeah.
super delicate and exquisite regulation of their function. And so one mechanism to regulate their function is dimerization, another one is trafficking. That's why I wanted to explore more. And then I also switched to mammalian cells. Before I was working on E cells, and I started working on using microscopes, so light microscopy, and then it evolved in what I'm doing now.
That's so fantastic. One other question I had for you is how is the adjustment going from Italy to the UK? I mean, I asked this from everyone, and you'd think that there is a bigger difference between Europe and the US, but I'm sure, although it's closer, Italy to UK, just
Sure.
wondering.
Yeah. I mean, it has been an amazing experience. The UK in general, but specifically London, so many cultures mixing, getting to know people from all possible backgrounds, cultural, religious,
Yeah.
politics. Yeah, it was just amazing and something really new to what I was exposed to in Italy.
Mhm.
Especially because I did the university in the same city I was born in, and so I wasn't exposed to so much variety,
Yeah.
of people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it has been great. Yeah, I loved it, and it hasn't been a like. I mean, it requires some adjustments of how you
Of course.
the person you are, your routine
Yeah.
and everything. But I see it all in a positive way. There were challenges, of course, but yeah, which all led to beautiful things. So
Yeah.
an enrichment. So yeah, it's been
Yeah.
great.
You get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah,
And that's painful, but at the same time, very absolutely worth it.
yeah, rewarding also.
So how was the adjustment going from London to Bordeaux? Different country, different
Um,
language.
yeah,
Um,
but that's so. I did it once, moving from Italy to the UK. I was ready to do it another time. I was not scared at all. So yeah, I didn't feel that hard. It
okay.
felt natural. I was just following my instinct and what I wanted
Mhm.
to do. Um, yeah, again, it came with some challenges. The biggest one was for sure my personal situation
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I got married in June 2018, and in July 2018, I moved to France alone because my husband was still working in the UK in London
Wow.
and couldn't moved out of his job. He didn't want to do it. I didn't want him to do it. And so we decided to live separated for it ended up being 1 year and a half, and then he managed to join me here
Yeah.
with a job he loves. So yeah,
Again, painful but worth it.
painful but worth it. Exactly.
I love it. Let's get back to science a little bit. So you mentioned being interested in receptor regulation and you're studying trafficking. What's your favorite GPCR so far? Tough one.
Well,
It doesn't have to be a GPCR. It can be a it can be even a pathway, or it can be something that has to
right.
do with GPCRs.
So the can I talk about a cell type?
Of course you can.
Okay, my favorite
We
cell
don't
types
judge.
are neurons. So they are the hardest model I worked with so far, but they are the most beautiful cell type ever. I'm not a neuroscientist. I never took any neuroscience course. So when I came here, I felt really going back 10 years in my education, feeling like a student on our first day of university. But again, challenges that put you in like a very positive mood.
Mhm.
Everything's new, you don't get bored, you just get
Yeah.
excited about what you're doing. And yeah, what I love about these cells is that they are so specialized. You can do so much with them. It's very hard again to work with them, but especially for membrane trafficking, it just gets 1 million times more interesting than studying trafficking in other cell types where you don't have all these spatial organization at a cell level.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's why. And then going to the receptor types, I really can't answer. I work with many GPCRs. All of them are beautiful and essential to make our body work. And no, it would really be unfair.
Okay, then tell us what are your favorite GPCRs that you actually
So
like?
I don't know. I can't tell too much because of also projects I work on. So I'm not sure how much I can tell. But uh,
Whatever you can share.
um, yeah,
If you can share. If
I
you're
really okay. The most interesting GPCR to me is the ones we don't know much about.
yeah.
So, for example, I've worked on a project with the dopamine receptors, and very little is known about intracellular signaling of these receptors. And yeah, I just find them so attractive.
Yeah.
But then there are others where there are kind of true schools like, oh, this receptor internalizes, oh no, it doesn't internalize. And so just like trying to answer this question with your own experiments just makes it again very exciting.
Yeah.
So it really depends on the question you have, but I see challenges again as something exciting. So I don't want to say the more challenging, the better. But yeah, it adds that little sparkle to
Wow.
your everyday research.
Wow. No, that's fantastic. And I think what comes through from our conversation is that neurons are beautiful, so cool to work with. And there's all sorts of GPCRs that you can study in neurons. And because of the shape of the neurons, it allows you to really look at the trafficking in a unique manner.
Yes, absolutely. You got it.
And then you are
Yeah,
you don't want to share with us which receptors, but hopefully soon in a series of publications, we will hear more about what you're working on. Hopefully. That's
fingers
the goal.
crossed.
That's the goal. I wanted to ask, um, well, I kind of lost my thought process here. If you had some advice to scientists who are contemplating doing a PhD or a postdoc as to how to think about their career path, or what are the principles they should be thinking about and using when they pick their next project or their next lab, what would that look like? You definitely mentioned taking on new challenges with a positive attitude. So not the more difficult, the better, but the new is good, and
Yeah.
things are boring, but anything else if you can expect expand on that.
Yeah, well, there are several things you need to make sure you're happy with. So, for sure, this is a job that doesn't reward much in terms of money compared to other jobs. Uh, but if you're happy like this, great. But so you need to consider not just that, but it seems a bit silly to say, but you need to be happy with what you're doing. So if you're happy in your job and in your life, with your life choices, like the the hours you work, the place you are, because that's also very important. In my case, I had to go away from my family because there are good labs in Italy, but not as good as somewhere else in the world. And so I had to go away from my family to find something I really liked uh, from a work perspective. Um, so yeah, there's different challenges you need to face and embark, but if that makes you happy, that's great. That's all
Yeah.
I want to say. Like, yeah, just do whatever makes you happy. It makes me really happy to come to work every morning thinking I'm doing something that is pushing boundaries of what's known. And here I have all the means to do that. And yeah, even if I had to compromise something else in my life, that's the type of compromise that makes me happy.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's very hard to give this kind of suggestions because everyone is different. Everyone has
Yeah.
different priorities. It can be, again, the money, being close to the family, or something else, the
Yeah.
prestige of where you're working and
Yeah.
the people you're working with and so on.
Yeah.
So it's quite hard to give just one.
It, yeah, it's hard, but at the same time, I think what's really important that you highlighted as well is picking something that resonates with you. Like since we turned on the camera and we jumped on Zoom, all that came through from your end is that you're super happy with what you're doing and you love it. You didn't have
Yes,
to say
there
I'm
are
happy.
hard times,
Of,
okay?
of course, I'm not saying
Nothing's
just
easy.
just because you're super happy doesn't mean that it's happy and working well all the time,
No,
but you learn to take on those challenges and you, in spite of the difficulties, you're still motivated in the morning to go to the lab. That's what
yeah,
comes through to me.
that's great. I
That's
like it.
that's absolutely what comes through to me. How do you deal with challenges?
Challenges can be very tough. Like can put you down, can really make you doubt about yourself, about your choices, life choices. And I went through these moments several times in my life. And probably the most recent and the most difficult one in terms of challenges has been be coming back to work after maternity leave. Before that, I would have never expected something so hard. I came back, I felt I was brainwashed. I didn't remember where things were in the lab, how to run a PCR, and I felt I needed someone next to me in the lab just to tell me, yeah, you're doing right.
Oh my
Because I
God.
was doubting about myself the whole time. And this just for being away, I mean, it was quite long maternity leave, 8 months.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it was not like I was away for years.
Exactly. I was gonna ask how
Um,
long were you away? This sounds
I
like
was
it's been
away
years.
8 months. Yes, five. I came back when my daughter was 6 because I had to
Mhm.
rest towards the end of my pregnancy,
Yeah.
and so that was very hard. But the thing that kept me going and I really kept in my mind was you've been through moments like this already when projects were not working, where you were about to drop everything and just quit, but you stayed, you made your brain work, find a solution, of course,
Yeah.
together with other people, because this is a highly collaborative work and process.
Yeah.
And you overcome those challenges and those difficulties. So
Yeah.
it can happen also this time. And if it doesn't happen, you're still learning something. Maybe it's the moment to quit, research because it's no good anymore for you.
Yeah.
You've changed and your life can change. So never take it as a personal failure, but learn something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also stick to those moments that the challenges in the past you've overcome.
Yeah.
And those that I've overcome in the past were really thanks to some amazing people that were my example, my light in the dark, um, which reassured me and yeah, supported me.
Yeah.
Just yeah, showing it's possible, it's normal to have
Yeah.
challenges, and yeah, it can go other ways. You can solve them or not, still fine.
No, I think you're right. And I think when it comes to, family and children, I mean, think about it. You created your body, the GPCRs in your body helped you create a little human, and that's challenging and that's taxing anyway on
Yeah.
on on a human body. But I like that. I think it's really, it takes a village. So have reaching out to people around you, getting the help that you need, talking about it. I think just putting it out there and saying, I'm struggling or I have this problem just makes it so much more solvable or so much smaller
Yeah.
than keeping it inside as well.
Although I think this is a process that is not shouldn't be based on one person doing this, but it's the whole society
Yeah.
that should start thinking this way and yeah,
Yeah.
kind of normalize people being away from work for several reasons, which is
Yeah.
not just family, like yeah, building a family or and things like these.
Yeah.
But the problem is this is such a competitive field, research, that we never want to look weak or the loser
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
behind others.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes that makes it harder.
Do you think this is a female thing? That as women we have this need to like compete, not necessarily compete, to make sure that internally in our own heads we feel like we haven't wasted time and we're on task on stuff all the time. Maybe we're putting a lot of pressure on ourselves.
Of course. Yeah, this again comes back to how the society is and
Yeah, yeah, no,
how we
absolutely.
used to see things. Yeah, I feel the men, women, this balance, like unbalance,
Hmm.
huge. I really think there is a huge gap we need to work on, and yeah, I, 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 I have strong feelings about it, and that's also why
Yeah.
I'm very happy to work on these and give visibility to women. And this goes to the probably you understand where I'm trying to go is the female GPCR
Yes.
list.
Yes.
So
Let's.
the GPCR ladies website that Masha Neve created.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, I suddenly emailed her and say, "How can I help? I love this idea."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's enough and won't solve anything, but
It's a
yeah,
start. It's a
it's a
start. and
start.
And it's good that you mentioned, because actually, which reminds me, I actually had a conversation with Masha as well at the Gordon conference. Now, everybody listening to this is going to think that everybody in the world working on GPCs was at the Gordon conference. No, there is a limit of I think registration limit there. But yes, I was talking to Masha, and actually, it's something that I will bring back up to her and make space for the GPCR ladies on the Dr. GPCR platform, because I think it's important to encourage female scientists to even have the opportunity to have conversations about, not necessarily only talking about the issues, but talking about solutions. What can we do?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
becoming more action driven. I mean, I think everybody knows that there is this discrepancy in numbers between male and female scientists.
And it's
And
not just in numbers, it's also in the positions that
yes,
they are covered. So to me, it's clear that most of the lab heads and PIs are men.
yeah,
And this doesn't make a woman feel comfortable sometimes. And it enters your head and makes you think you're not enough, you won't make it. I don't know.
yeah. No,
It's
I
quite
think,
an important point.
yeah, and I don't think it's about the science. I think it's about also, as you
No.
mentioned, it's a society, it's a cultural thing, it's
Yes.
how things have been. And one phrase I absolutely hate is when people say, "Oh, it has always been this way," or "We've always done it this
Yeah,
way."
we can change it, you know?
And we should absolutely change it. So let's brainstorm, maybe you and I, after we
Yeah.
record, because I think it's something that's very important for us to foster. And there's, I can think of multiple ways where we can foster the leadership skills and help boost confidence.
Yes.
I think, and I think it starts with the confidence of, yes, I can do it, or yes, I'm gonna fight for it, or I'm gonna find ways to get there. And the there, it will depend. Let's say I was talking yesterday to Dan Isom at the University of Miami, and
Yeah.
he mentioned that it took him a long time to find his faculty position. But the way he found it was through him and his Hendrik Dolman, who was his PI at the time, going to a Gordon conference and him presenting a poster, and then meeting somebody from the University of Miami who said, "You should apply,"
Yeah.
you know? And he said he never would have thought that he would ever live in Miami.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, I thought it was a really nice story. Because what I'm getting into is that, say, telling yourself that I want to be a PI or I want to be in industry, it's a path that you can think about or you can work towards, but the ending or the end goal might not be University of Miami, it might be another university. But as long as you enter in an environment or you get to a point where you are happy, like you are going in the lab in the morning with all the difficulties that neuronal cells give you, that's the, I think that's the win.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I really hope
Yeah, I think that
we will
there's
see
more.
a world where women and men are 50-50 represented. Um, yeah, so it won't look weird. You know, I'm just so amazed by how sometimes we just see men in a panel of speakers and it's seen as a normal thing. No, it's not normal.
Well, I think for us on the Dr. GPCR side, whenever we organize events and then we send out invitations, sometimes it's very difficult to find female presenters, which is very rare, I have to say. But other times we get no as an answer from some female scientists who say, "Well, nah, I don't have the time," or "I don't have." So, but it's a struggle. I'm not saying we're not trying or people don't want to come. I'm just saying sometimes it's a struggle and you have
Yeah,
to be mindful about it, in the
yeah.
sense that you have to push as long as you can, as hard as you can, to try and have that balance
Yes.
and
But
not
this
go
is an
to the usual
effort
subs.
that we need to do as a society. As a
Yes,
society.
yes, yes,
And
yes.
even men, I think maybe they should play a we need to give them like more space in this as well. Like it's
Absolutely.
not a problem just related to women because it touches
Absolutely.
women. You know, it's a problem of the society again. So if the panel of the speakers is just men should say, wait, there is something wrong here. You know,
Yes,
it
yes.
shouldn't just be women realizing this, and I don't know if it's something like we should give them more space or
I think it,
uh, maybe.
I don't know. I think in the way I think about it and the way I see it out after the power hour at the Gordon conference. We keep mentioning this Gordon conference because you and I have this
It
in
was
common.
great.
It
Actually,
was a
like,
real
it was an amazing conference. Yeah.
and there was a significant effort put into balancing out the
Yeah,
speaker genders.
I've noticed
So
that. Yeah.
kudos to Andrew and Martine for that. What I wanted to get to at this power hour, there were these discussions about, I think there was a scenario that was presented where a male scientist made a completely unacceptable comment on a female colleague. And in this exercise, we were grouped by I think by level, and there were a lot of male scientists at this event, at this power hour.
That's great.
And one thing that came back from there is that they didn't, if they don't, if you're a male and you don't experience these difficulties, then you might not even think about, wait a minute, maybe, you're not aware of this because you live in your own environment or in your own,
Yeah.
little thing. But making them part of the conversation and aware of these is absolutely essential. We
Yes.
completely drifted out of out of the topic, so
Yeah,
but it's
but
but I think it's important. I think it's important to cover. And I, now that we're talking about it, I think we should, from Dr. GPCR's side, I'm trying to think about what is the best way for us to bring these forward, to at least have regular conversations. One other thing that is beyond gender is supporting postdocs who are looking for faculty positions, or even supporting new faculty who have never done this, who had never had to do a budgeting thing,
sure.
exercise, and then potentially pairing them up with others who have been in the game for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and then
Yes.
helping supporting them. So I think there's a lot of support work to be done on a lot of fronts, including the gender disparity, but also supporting scientists in
A
general in our field.
category, let's say.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Although on that topic, I think there is a problem behind, which is still that, at least this is how I see it, or my personal opinions. There is still competition between PIs and postdocs. So unfortunately, there are some PIs, not everyone. I've been very lucky to interact with very supportive PIs, but from stories, from things I've witnessed, um, there's still like, oh, PIs struggle to get grants,
yeah,
or yeah, having enough money
yeah.
to sustain a lab and doing all, like, yeah, uh, all the working on all the projects they want to carry on.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and so it's like seeing a postdoc who's applying, another a possible competitor, a
Yeah,
postdoc
no, I
who's
get it.
applying for a position is a competitor for the grants. And
Yeah, yeah.
so this
Yeah,
is
no,
again because funds are limited, is a highly competitive field, and so this is kind of
you're right.
not normal, but
Yeah, I think you're
I
right.
don't
And these
know.
things happen. Then I think that opens up a bigger discussion as to how does the academic system work.
Yes,
So it's really
unfortunately.
that if you're fortunate, you get a grant, and then you have that money to use to get publications to get another grant. And then the publication guy may get evaluated. Your reviewer might be your competitor. You don't know. So who knows if it gets published on time for your grant. It's this vicious circle,
Yes.
unfortunately, to which I don't have an answer. I think Stuart Motley and I talked about this at length in a different podcast episode, but this is also a discussion that we potentially could have as a community, as a scientific group in general, where we can think about what can we do better or how can we improve upon the academic system and the way things are being evaluated. Because what we don't necessarily talk about, and I think we should, is what are all the failures? How many people, I don't think anybody tracks this, how many people left academia because they were unfortunate and they had a bad PI, or they started out as an associate, as a professor, and then they didn't get their grant and they had to leave, or how,
Yes.
all of these things. And I think these are community-wide topics that are absolutely worth having discussions about, and maybe daring to dream about solutions that we can potentially think about implementing.
Yes.
you know
Yeah.
but you're right, these are all problems. And
Based.
the worst thing or the best thing about our us as scientists is that inside of everything that we just talked about, we still get excited by going to the
Yes.
lab and doing
I'm
experiments.
surprised this still happens to me. It's like, despite all of these, how could it be possible?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, but I was talking to Dan yesterday, and we were. It's a long story without giving away too much. Although your episode is airing after his, so people will have heard it. He was talking about him starting out as in art, and he's very good at drawing. And he actually I think he had a job as a medical he the sketches that you see in the books, I can't remember the exact term. He
Yeah. No, I
draw
got you.
those out, and then art led him to science. you know
Wow. That's a
really
very
real
cool way
really really
to
cool way.
enter
But
science. Yeah.
and he had to take the science courses so that he can do this job, because if you're illustrating, if you're a medical illustrator, you have to understand the basics. And that's how he ended up in
Yeah,
science.
of
And
course. Mm.
and I thought it was such a nice and inspiring story as to, you never know what leads you to science. And the reason I was getting into this point is that although all the problems exist in science in general, let's not talk about the societies, because I think that's another bucket there. We still feel like whenever we get really cool data, it's beautiful. I was just mentioning, I see a beautiful dose response curve. I'm like, what? How does I
Yeah.
couldn't even come with the numbers to actually fit that curve, and the cells just did it,
Yeah.
you know? So I think it had we can't stop. It's just a matter of trying to
Yeah,
do the
it's
best.
our responsibility, to
Yes,
make the society and the world we live in better. At least I believe in that. I
I think so
strongly
too.
believe in that.
I think so too.
Um, yeah, so it would be nice to have this type of conversations more frequently. Again, to
Yeah.
normalize all these situations and to try think of solutions.
I think yeah, and let me think about it and go back to the drawing board, and then maybe put together what I'd love to be able to do is to put together a committee, a kind of a scientific advisory committee, whenever we create events, we would have a committee that would oversee who we invite, to make sure that we have the balance, not only of topics, but also the gender balance, the overall global representation, for
Yeah.
these meetings, and potentially even having dedicated time outside of these events where we can have a panel discussion about
Yes.
all sorts of topics that people don't necessarily spend enough time talking about.
Yeah.
Just
Sounds
lots
sounds
lots to do, lots to do.
good.
Lots to do. All right, Silvia, any well, actually, one last question, and you may not
Sure.
have the answer to this. After your postdoc, what next? Tough one. I know. I know. I left the last one for.
Yeah, I would like to stay in science, like academic research. And after moving so many times country, I wouldn't mind staying here just because, yeah, it's just easy and
Yeah.
I really like the place where I am.
Good.
So yeah, actually France is quite lucky country, let's say, because one of the very good things they have here is this national. It's called concours. I can't really translate it. It's like
It's a competition type of
a
thing where you,
competition at national
yeah,
level for permanent researcher position. So essentially, once you get it, you have your job for life, and you can keep on doing whatever you like
yeah,
without all this pressure of,
yeah,
uh, of course there's still pressure because you need to apply for grants to fund your research, but you don't need to worry about your position, your salary,
yeah,
and that's great. So that's my plan A. But plan B can be, of course, moving to somewhere else. And yeah, having my own lab or not. I'm still exploring different options.
yeah, yeah.
And I got to know several nice companies, private companies,
Hmm.
which a few years ago I would have never considered. And
Hmm.
now it's like, oh, actually, even the private sector, they do quite cool stuff. And
Yeah,
yeah, so yeah, I'm exploring.
yeah,
I'm enjoying the rest of my postdoc for a bit more than a year, and I'll take this time to really start to explore all the options, see what the end of my postdoc will bring,
yeah.
and yeah, see how I feel about the future.
No, I think that's great, and I think it's great to keep an open mind. I think what comes through is as long as you get to do really cool science that you're really passionate about, the rest is quote unquote, the rest is kind of details. As long as you can do cool science, collaborate with people,
Yeah,
and then make new discoveries. I think the collaborative aspect is very important as well,
yeah.
and make cool discoveries.
Something I really give priority to, it's a supportive environment. Is there's this wave of, I think I see a lot of young PIs that really want to make sure their lab, it's written in their, when they advert for postdocs position or PhD positions in their lab, really something that catches my attention is how much they talk about the environment in their lab, inclusive, they
Yeah,
promote diversity, and that's great. That's
yeah,
truly great. And that's something I want to make sure I'll get in my next
yeah.
chapter of my career.
No, I think that's
Um,
awesome. I think that's absolutely awesome. And I like the idea of keeping an open mind.
yeah.
Keeping an open mind. All right. Thank you, Silvia. I really appreciate it. Don't go anywhere. We're gonna let people wonder what we talk about after we stop recording. But thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Yamina. Thank you.
Can I ask you a favor? Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Many of you come back and watch our videos but aren't subscribed. Having more subscribers will help us get you more content. Also, mark your calendars and join us for the inaugural Endocrine Metabolic GPCR's meeting taking place April 22nd to 23rd this year in Birmingham in the UK. Thank you for joining us and listening to this Dr. GPCR podcast episode. We would like to thank our guests, our Dr. GPCR team members, Attila, Ines, Montserrat, Ivana, Andreina, and Valint. If you like our podcast, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. You can also leave us a testimonial at drgpcr.com/testimonials and subscribe to our monthly newsletter directly in the ecosystem. Another way to support us is to share your favorite Dr. GPCR program with your network and colleagues. Don't forget, we're also starting up the Dr. GPCR University. So if you'd like to join us for Dr. Karen Atkins' class or you'd like to teach a class, please don't forget to reach out to us at hello@drgpcr.com. Until next time, stay safe.